Before that corporate party, my life followed a structure I didn't question anymore, not because it was perfect, but because it was consistent. Routine creates the illusion of stability, and stability slowly replaces the need to verify anything. You stop checking, stop analyzing, stop asking. You assume that what exists will continue to exist in the same form. That assumption becomes your baseline reality. Anna and I had been together for almost 9 years. 6 of those years we were married. There were no dramatic moments you could point to and say, that was the peak, or that was the beginning of the end. Everything was gradual. Even our relationship didn't start with intensity. It developed calmly, predictably, like something that was always meant to happen. We met through mutual friends. No instant attraction, no cinematic moment. Just repeated contact, conversations, shared routines. Over time, familiarity turned into attachment, attachment into dependence, and dependence into something we labeled as love. From the outside, we looked stable. 2 working adults, no obvious problems, no financial disasters, no visible conflicts. We had a mortgage, a shared budget, shared responsibilities, the kind of life that doesn't draw attention. Inside that life, things were quieter. Not bad, not broken, just muted. Conversations became shorter over the years. Physical closeness became less frequent, not because of conflict, but because of habit. You stop trying when nothing seems to be at risk. We talked about having children, but always postponed it. Timing never felt right. There was always something more urgent, more logical, more practical. At the time, it felt like responsible decision-making. Later, it felt like avoidance. Anna was structured in a way that made her predictable. She liked control, clarity, defined outcomes. Even emotionally, she operated within boundaries. If something bothered her, she would either address it directly or suppress it completely. There was no middle state, no confusion, no mixed signals. That consistency built trust. Not because I verified it constantly, but because it never gave me a reason not to trust it. Which is why the shift, when it happened, was immediately noticeable, even without clear evidence. The corporate party itself wasn't significant. End-of-quarter results, internal event, rented restaurant, standard format. She didn't want to go. That part I remember clearly. She stood in the hallway, already dressed, but not moving toward the door. "I'm tired," she said. "It's going to be loud and pointless." "Then don't go," I answered. "I kind of have to. It'll look bad." That reasoning made sense. Work expectations, social obligations, visibility inside a company. None of it unusual. She left around 7. I stayed home. The evening was uneventful. Emails, background noise from the TV, nothing that required attention. She said she would be back around 11. She came back close to 1. That difference, 2 hours, wasn't extreme. It didn't trigger immediate suspicion. It just created a small inconsistency between expectation and reality. When she walked in, I registered the first deviation. She didn't look at me. Not avoidance in an obvious sense, more like omission. The expected interaction simply didn't occur. "Hi," she said, already moving past me. "How was it?" "Fine, loud, same as always. Minimal information, no expansion, no эмоционального остатка от события. Then the smell. Perfume. Not hers. I didn't react. There were too many alternative explanations. Shared spaces, mixed scents. People stand close. Nothing conclusive. But the brain doesn't discard anomalies. It stores them." She went to the bathroom immediately, closed the door, stayed there longer than usual. I sat in the living room, not actively thinking, but observing internally. Something felt misaligned, but there was no clear variable to isolate. When she came out, she didn't initiate any interaction. "I'm tired. I'm going to sleep." No questions, no provisional exchange, just a clean exit from the shared space. That absence was more noticeable than any presence could have been. At night, lying next to her, I noticed the distance. Physical orientation shifted away. Again, not unusual in isolation, but consistent with the pattern forming. I told myself it meant nothing. Fatigue explains behavior. Alcohol explains detachment. Noise explains irritability. Every detail had a logical explanation, individually. The next morning introduced a second layer of inconsistency. She woke up earlier than usual, not slightly earlier, noticeably earlier. I heard movement in the kitchen before my alarm. That almost never happened. When I entered, she was already dressed, fully prepared, coffee in hand, phone active. "You're early." "Yeah, got things to finish." No eye contact. Typing while drinking coffee. Fast, focused, screen angled slightly away. Not hidden. Positioned. That distinction matters. Hidden behavior triggers suspicion. Positioned behavior avoids triggering it. She left quickly. No pause. No routine interaction. The apartment felt different after she left. Not empty. Disconnected. Over the next few days, the pattern expanded. She started coming home later. Not late enough to accuse. Late enough to measure. 15 minutes, 20, sometimes 40. Each instance had a valid explanation. Traffic, client delays, extra work. Individually, each explanation held. Collectively, they formed a trend. Her phone behavior changed. Before, it was an object. Now, it was a constant. Always within reach. Screen down, notifications controlled. If it vibrated, she checked immediately. If I was nearby, the angle adjusted. Slightly, consistently. At night, she stayed awake longer. Typing, screen brightness low. If I moved, the screen turned off instantly. No hesitation, no delay. That level of reaction isn't spontaneous. It's trained. About a week after the party, she came home with a gift bag. "What's that?" "Something from work. They were giving things away." Inside, a bottle of perfume. Expensive, retail packaging, no branding, no corporate marking. "Since when do they give this?" She shrugged. "Leftovers." "Possible, not probable." I didn't argue. Facts were still insufficient. At this point, perception changes. You stop looking for confirmation. You start building models. Every action is no longer neutral. It's data, speech patterns, timing, movement, silence. She became more precise in communication. Fewer words, fewer emotions, controlled responses, no spontaneous sharing. The absence of randomness became noticeable. The most important shift wasn't external. It was internal. I stopped trusting the baseline. Before, consistency created confidence. Now, consistency of deviation created suspicion. There was no single moment of realization, just accumulation. I started replaying the timeline. Before the party, stable. After the party, shift. No gradual transition, no intermediate stage, a clear before and after. That implies a trigger, a specific event that changed behavior structure. At some point, the question changed. Not, is something wrong, but what exactly happened that night? Because the pattern wasn't random. It was the result of something concrete, something that required control, adjustment, and ongoing management. And whatever it was, it hadn't ended.